MudRFunR here. I've already got the rod bearings put into this engine, and right now I've just got it somewhat covered in plastic, and my intake is just sitting on top right there, and today I'm going to be putting the intake on. I've got the gasket area all cleaned up on the block, and now I just got to clean up the intake. You got to be a little bit careful. I've got a pretty sharp scraper here, and aluminum's pretty soft, so you want to be a little bit careful when you're scraping across there that you don't take off any aluminum. One thing that I wanted to point out here, right here it looks like there's a little bit of a ridge just on the inside edge of this intake here, and I don't really like that on there. It should be actually quite smooth right there, so I'm going to take a little bit off with the scraper until it gets down even here. And now that ridge looks to be gone from this edge here. This end over here has got a little tiny ridge just along the top. I don't know if you can see it, but I can see it. So I'm going to just scrape it there until it gets nice and smooth. Gets that little ridge off of there. There we go. And then I'll just clean it up with some emery cloth here. Very lightly. I'm not putting a lot of pressure on this. Now just make sure these ends are cleaned up here. And one more side left to do. I'm just at my grinder right now and cleaning up my intake bolts. Now you might want to note that where this bracket is, that bolt is just a slight bit longer. So what I wanted to show you was right in the center of that bolt you'll see that little bit of a white coating on there, and that is thread sealer. You really need to get that off. Clean out the threads. Even if you don't want to clean up the heads on them, clean out the threads. You really need to do that to get a good torque. And I just use my wire wheel, clamp it in a vice grip. And I have a second vice grip that I just used to clamp that. That looks so much better. So you can see I've got everything cleaned up here by the head on the block, and I've got the intake all nicely cleaned up. And when I removed the intake, I put all the studs back where they belong, the bolts where they belong. I put everything back in place just loosely like that, just so that I could keep track of where everything is when I go to put it back in. Okay, if you've handled your intake a lot and moved it around back and forth, just want to check the underside of it again just to make sure that there's nothing got stuck onto the bottom of it, spider webs or who knows what. All clear. So you're looking at the back of the engine here, and I did my research on this. I'm not a professional mechanic, and I was a little disappointed with what I could find on the internet, but I did find out that this plug right here, that is to go to the back of the block, and on the gasket it should say this side up. That's the part that you put facing outward. I'm just having a look at these just to make sure that they are the right ones and that they're going to fit, which they are. Now your gasket set should come with a little package like this of silicone or possibly a tube. There, and the top just rips off of this one. This one says it's aluminum silicone sealant. So once you get started on this, you're going to have to finish the job, so don't do this if you don't have the time to finish it. Another thing I should mention is I put a plug right here in the hole where the oil pressure sender goes into, just to keep the silicone out of that. And you're going to want to go right up partway onto the head there. Kind of missed the spot there, and it's not quite as thick right here, so I'm just going to go over it a little bit more. There. I'm just going to put these two in here, make sure that they get stuck right into the silicone. Now I'm just smearing the silicone up over the top of the corners of the gasket here a little bit, just to make sure that everything's going to be covered. And just make sure everything is lined up with the holes on both sides. Now just make sure you got this all turned in the right direction. I still have all my studs in the order here, so I'm going to lay them out somewhere on my workbench here in the same order. You don't want to leave the bolts in there when you're putting it together. And this one I'm taking the hook right off. Okay, everything's all lined up nice. Now just set it down very carefully. You only want to have to set it down once. Once it's in place, try not to pick it up again. Now you probably have to look down inside there and make sure that your holes are going to line up. I'm just using a center punch, and the holes are almost lined up here, so I'm just going to push this down in. Make sure that it's all in place nice. Okay, first bolt is in. Second bolt. Third bolt. And I'm going to do one more bolt in this end over here yet. Now at this point I know there's a lot of people who are saying, hey, what about the thread sealer? I didn't forget. I'm just setting this up so that the gaskets are just going to stay in place where I want them. What you need to use is a high temperature thread sealer, not just some stuff from the plumbing store. And my bottle's running out a little bit. I just painted my little bracket that goes on the end over here, and I just put a little bit of thread sealer, just a little bit of sealer on the end of the bolt. Okay, I took that second one out that I put in. And I'm just going to work my way to the back of the block on that side for now. Just a little bit of sealer on there. Just keeps the oil from coming back up through these threads. And taking the back one back out. The sealer on. Back in. The other back one back out again. Sealer's on, and the bracket this time. And take the last bolt out. And back in again. Okay, I'm just going to snug those up just a little bit. I'm not really putting any torque on these, I'm just getting them down so that they're just touching the intake right now. So the bolts are all just where they're just touching the intake right now. And get the torque wrench. Alright, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get out all these bolts with my torque wrench. I'm using an adapter to adapt it to a smaller socket. And some of them, by the looks of it, I'm going to have to use the deep one on the studs. And some other ones I'm going to have to use this, it's a wobbly extension. Pretty cool little thing. Alright, I was a little disappointed. I went on the internet and I was trying to search, even on YouTube, I was trying to search the torque sequence on this particular intake. And I really couldn't find anything on the order of the torque sequence. So I ended up going back to one of my videos and checking the torque sequence on the V8 that I did, and they have the same amount of bolts and very similar blocks, so I'm just going to go by what I know from the V8. And as far as the torque on these bolts, I found anything from 28 foot, no actually I found anything from 12 foot-pounds to 35 foot-pounds. Some of the ones that say 12 foot-pounds, I think they're getting confused with the upper intake manifold on a plenum style engine, and that plastic plenum is 10 to 12 foot-pounds, I believe. On an old block Chev, they use a torque of 30 pounds, and I'm just going to basically go by what I do with a regular old school Chevy engine. And the way I do it with an old school Chevy is I start at 10 foot-pounds, and that's what I'm going to start them out at. On the back one. Normally on an older small block I would go up to 20 at this point, and I would end at 30, but on this particular engine I'm going to put it up to 35, and the reason being is because of this gasket right here. I want to make sure that it's all squished down in there nicely. So I want to go halfway between 10 and 35. So I'm going to go as far as 22, 23. Alright, I'm at 23. Back around to this side again. So it's third one from the front. Third one from the front on the opposite side. Next one back. Try one more time to get in here. Sweet. Alright, 23. And then second one from the front. Front one. Second from the front on the other side. Front one. Ooh. Might be a good idea to take that little sending unit out of there, the temperature sender. I just broke that puppy off with my torque wrench. Ouch. Okay, there's the front one there, and now second one from the back of the engine. Last one. Second from the back on the other side. Back one. Alright, and now I'm going to go up to the full 35. Back to third from the front. And then everything else just has to be put back together. So, hopefully soon that engine's going in that little empty space behind me there. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out.